Alright folks, here's the deal. I got some food cooking on the pizzazz now because I got kind of hungry while I was doing that last video. So we got about 15 minutes and then we're going to be done. We're going to go a lot faster in this one. Probably less sharing, more reading, like I'm supposed to actually be doing. So our next element that we're going to talk about with landscape design is form. And form in its simplest definition is the shape of the landscape and or the objects in that landscape. Examples of form include cubes, spheres, pyramids, cylinders, cones, or a combination of any of these shapes put together. Form is used by our brains in order to logically analyze a visual image. In other words, our brains instinctively break down every visual image into a collection of cubes, spheres, pyramids, cylinders, and cones. Even those shapes that we are like weird things. I'm trying to see, like, I don't know. I have a bottle of paint right here. Our brains are going to break this down into a combination of those shapes even. By doing this, our brains have to do less work overall to process what our eyes are actually seeing. A good designer is going to use form to aid the brain, reduce strain needed to process a visual image, and enhance the brain's ability to focus, relax, and become calm. All right, one slide down. Second slide on form, more details. Woo! Form matters because it prevents a landscape from being too busy and messy. The same kinds of forms, when used repeatedly, create a visual theme that provides consistency, harmony, and order to the landscape. So if you look down to that picture right below, you can see where these like circular looking shrubs are here. And you can see how the left side looks the same as the right side. So that's that unity that we're talking about. Good landscapes use form consistently in order to make the landscape seem designed and intentional instead of haphazard and unpredictable. So again, going back to this, sides are the same, so I can tell that whoever did that put a lot of thought and effort into making sure that it looks all uniform and put together really well. Our brains like predictability, logic, and order. That makes it easier for us to think about things, and good landscapes should supply this through the proper use of form. Next slide. Space. All right. This is our third element that we're going to talk about. So, space is the sense that a design is three-dimensional and has depth, or the sense that the landscape extends into the distance and is not two-dimensional. So, look at this picture right here. You don't really want to just look at the front of it, right? That goes back to what I said about having images on the wall behind me in the first video. When I look at this isn't something that belongs on my wall. It makes me want to look all the way down that landscape right there. So, alright, landscape that lacks depth will appear as if it has width and height, but very little depth. Obviously, it lacks depth. A well-designed landscape will appear to extend into distance when it's possible. Sometimes this won't always be possible. I think of like if you have a fence in the background, you might not have a ton of space in front of that fence to have a landscape, so you might have like a foot or two and you can't really create a lot of depth in that kind of situation. Where was I? That will draw the viewer to get deeper into the landscape. So again, like when I see this picture, I want to look all the way up to that landscape to the front door right there. This can be accomplished through changes as the landscape moves deeper into the distance or by repeated use of the same form, plantings, texture, etc., or both. Crazy! Another slide on space. Here we go. A sense of space can be created in multiple ways. Some of these include appropriate combinations of open and closed spaces. Example, open spaces that proceed into the distance with layered borders on either side. You can also use the same kinds of forms and shapes repeatedly so that their perceived decrease in size as they move into the distance creates a sense of distance. So if you look at that picture right there, those plants up in the front here are probably the same size as the ones in the back here, but as you look through the landscape, they look like they get smaller. Real trick on the eye right there. Alright, and then the last one, you can create ceilings and walls using vegetation. This creates a sense of intimacy and security when scaled properly. It enables the viewers to feel secure and sheltered in that place. Alright, Number 4, I think. Yeah. Oh, look at that. And this one only has one slide. Woo. I don't know if I can count. That looks like there's more than that left. Anyways, color. Color is one of the most prominent elements in landscape design. Color helps to emphasize, complement, heighten the effect of, or disguise other aspects of a landscape design. All those things color brings to the table. It also unifies the landscapes and creates consistency, which our brains like, throughout the entire design. Color is going to have, color is going to have 3 properties. Hue, this is, I have a paint here, so don't have a crayon, but if we're looking at this, hue is going to be the name of the crayon. So it says red, blue, green. This one in particular for paint is going to say purple iris. Value is going to be how dark or light the hue is, dark blue, light green. Maybe that's what the iris means on here. Not sure. Intensity is going to be how strong the color is, the brightness or pureness of the color. Is it going to be faint and dull or strong and bright? So I have a painting right over here. I'll show you guys. By the way, this is kind of like a personal thing to me, so if you don't like it, please don't tell me, because my grandma loves it and that makes me feel good. So I have a painting right here. If you look at like the paint that I used on here, it was an acrylic paint from like one of those super fancy art sets, right? So I don't know if it'll show in your video, but you can see how it shines and pops like that. That's better intensity. If you pull out some of the other paintings that I've done, they're going to be a little bit darker because I used this basic generic paint on them, and that's going to be more of that faint and dull color. Alright, moving on. Texture. Texture refers to how the appearance of the object feels to the viewer, right? So for example, a palm tree with large distinct leaves visually feels rough and coarse. Okay, I don't know if you guys have ever seen a palm tree. Kind of a bad example, but if you can look down in here, these, okay, don't quote me on this, they kind of look like hosta leaves, and I've felt a hosta leaf before, and I know that's pretty similar to that feeling. But on the other hand, a golf course, if you look up in this photo here, with consistent uniform green grass cut short, looks really smooth and velvety, like something you just want to lay on. Today it's 60 degrees here, so I could go out to a golf course and lay on some grass right now. That sounds pretty cool. Alright, texture can be used for many functions, including all of these following 4 points. First off, it enables certain emotions by the viewer. Soft texture can create a sense of comfort, while a rough texture adds excitement and heightens the attention. So I think this is more, I don't know, when I pull up to a hotel, which one do I see? Sometimes I think it kind of varies. Like I feel like in the summer, if you go to a hotel, they got some like crazy things that makes you want to see them from the road. But I feel like when you're up in their like little loop that you check in on, their like center column always has some pretty like chill plants that make you calm down and feel like you're at home. One way to see it, I guess. It also creates a sense of space and depth when rough textures are placed in front and soft textures are found in the distance. The landscape will appear larger. That's a super cool trick. It also provides contrast to emphasize or highlight parts of the plant, of the landscape, like a soft lawn leading up to a coarse texture of a pillared building of the university capitol. Interesting. It'll create lines. Another example, soft lawn again, is bordered by a coarse textured hedge. That's going to create a distinct line for the eye to follow. Alright. Next one. We're getting there, folks. Oh my gosh. Alright, value. Value is a measure of lightness or darkness, usually in regards to color. However, value can also affect the perception of the other elements, such as line, space, and texture. Value is going to be measured from the lightest, white side over here, to the darkest, black side, with the mid-gray being halfway in between on those values. Oh my gosh. Values necessary to create contrast are the difference between adjacent light and dark values. For example, a white line in a black shape has a high contrast and stands out. Oh my gosh, my family is so tired of hearing me talk about contrast in houses when we walk by. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we can do that in a landscape. Contrast is created when opposite values are adjacent to each other. Again, look at that picture, how you got shrub over here, they're the same distance apart, you got that contrast created then. So in other words, when light values are next to dark values, distinct contrast is created. So again, dark green shrub, white pillar, all good to go. Contrast is necessary to create lines for the eye to follow, to establish a sense of distance, to create space, to highlight the forms or 3D shapes that help the brain analyze the landscape and provide variety and consistency to the landscape. Contrast is necessary to highlight the focal point that your eye is drawn to because of the lines in that landscape. So again, looking at that landscape, the thing that points out to me obviously is going to be the statue, I would hope. I feel like if you're looking at like the trees in the background, you might be a little misguided. Without the combination of contrasting values and bold lines, your eyes will not be able to figure out where they need to go. So again, it's really easy for me to look at that picture and be like, yep, that's where I want to look. All right. Misuse. This is super important, kiddos. So we want to know like ways that we can draw our landscapes and that we're trying to go for the right thing, but it's just not working out, right? That's what this slide's going to be all about. So when an element is missing to an appreciable extent, every viewer will be dissatisfied with the landscape. If a line is missing, a viewer will not know where to look, their eyes will wander, and this creates unease to the viewer. If form is misused, the brain will be unable to logically examine or analyze a landscape. Our brains use form to make a landscape make sense. Misuse of form creates visual confusion and unease. And like I said, this isn't going to be something that you're like, my brain is confused and it doesn't make sense. Like, not really. You're just going to look at that and be like, feel like they're missing something. All right, next point. If space is improperly applied, a landscape will appear shallow and two-dimensional. It will lack the depth and the eye will not be drawn into the landscape. If color and texture are not appropriately applied, there will be no visual consistency, the sense of space and depth will be diminished, and the landscape will seem either boring or too busy. Without value and contrast, the lines lose their distinctness, the emphasis of that focal point is lost, and the landscape will lack depth and variety. It'll appear really bland. All right, 2 minutes left. We can do this. Proper use. When appropriately applied, the elements of design will create the following. Lines will guide your eye to specific point or points. Within a second of glancing at the landscape, your eye will be drawn into the landscape and allow you to take in everything in an instant. The forms used in the landscape will add visual order. It is easy for the brain to logically analyze its visual elements. A sense of order will be felt when the landscape is viewed, creating a sense of ease and satisfaction. The use of landscape will create dynamic landscapes that seem larger than their physical size, offer a sense of grandeur, add emphasis to structural elements and buildings, and draw the viewer's eyes deeper and deeper into the design. The use of color and texture will simultaneously add variety and consistency to the landscape, preventing it from seeming too busy or too boring. The color will highlight the focal points, lines, and forms found in the landscape and will allow the viewer to feel the intended mood the designer wanted the viewer to feel. All right, so then real quick, just want to introduce these to you. This picture here, I want you to try and practice finding all the elements in these pictures, and then we're going to ask you to put that into practice. There is an Elements of Design practice PowerPoint. What we want you to do is go out onto Google Images, Google some landscape designs, and try and find an example of each of these 6 characteristics that we talked about today. Let us know if you have any questions. Otherwise, hope you all have a great day. I'm going to go eat some French fries off the pizzazz and enjoy this beautiful 60-degree weather. Hope you get outside and enjoy it too.